It happens in a heartbeat. Your hand moves toward the perch, slow and familiar, the exact same motion you've made 1,000 times before. And then, completely out of nowhere, the beak closes down. Hard, fast, almost violent. You pull back, honestly, more confused and hurt. I mean, he was calm just a second ago, preening, content. Nothing about this moment should have ended in pain. You try to tell yourself it's nothing. Just a mood, right? A bad day. You move on with your morning, the way anyone would. But somewhere, quietly, this other possibility is just sitting in the back of your mind. One you haven't really let yourself think all the way through yet. What if that bite wasn't a behavioral issue at all? What if it was actually the only sentence your bird could form, in a language you were never taught to read? See, here's something almost no one tells new owners in the wild. A sick bird is a dead bird. Predators don't hunt the strong ones. They hunt the slow, the weak, the ones who show it. So over millions of years, budgies evolved this incredibly disciplined survival skill, probably one of the toughest in the animal kingdom. It's the ability to hide illness so completely that even the bird sitting right beside them on the exact same perch has no idea anything is wrong. This isn't just a personality trait, it's a biological mask, and they wear it constantly, expertly, right up until the exact moment it can no longer hold. And here's the part people miss. That moment doesn't always look like a collapse. Sometimes it looks like a single, sudden, unprovoked bite, which completely changes the whole question, doesn't it? See, if hiding their weakness is the default setting, then the absence of visible symptoms doesn't actually tell you anything. Instead, the sudden presence of an unexpected bite, that might be telling you absolutely everything. Somewhere beneath that perfectly smooth plumage, a slow internal shift might already be underway. One so subtle, it doesn't register as an illness in any of the ways you've been trained to look for. No drooping wings, no fluffed up feathers, no obvious change in appetite. Just a bird behaving completely normal, right up until your hand crosses into a part of their body that has quietly become unbearable to touch. You want to start with the wings, and it's the one place most owners never think to look. Every few months, a budgie sheds and regrows its feathers during a molt. It's something so common, it barely gets a second thought. But underneath each new feather, for a short window of time, sits something called a blood feather. It's a growing shaft still connected to an active nerve and blood supply, all wrapped up in this thin, hypersensitive sheath. If you touch it in the wrong spot, even lightly, even completely by accident, right where your hand naturally rests when you reach in to pet them, the sensation isn't just mild discomfort, it's closer to pure nerve pain. Sharp, immediate, and in a spot the bird cannot warn you about in any way, except one. Most owners have unknowingly brushed against a blood feather at some point. Honestly, most never even realized what they'd actually touched until the beak told them. But feathers are really only the surface of it. If you go deeper into the parts of a budgie's biology that never show up in a mirror, you find something even stranger. A nervous system finely tuned to detect internal disruption long before an owner ever could. Certain neurological flare-ups, some linked to low-grade infections, others to nutritional imbalances building up slowly over weeks, can create this localized hypersensitivity in specific areas of the body. Maybe a wing joint, a section along the back, or a patch right near the base of the tail. To the bird, it isn't a mood. It feels like a live nerve, exposed just beneath the surface, and every single touch near it sends a signal the body interprets as an active threat. Here's the part that should honestly unsettle you. In a lot of documented medical case histories, this extreme sensitivity actually showed up before any other visible symptom, which means in more than a few cases, the bite came first. The actual diagnosis didn't come until weeks later. Let's look even closer at something almost no bird owner ever considers. We need to talk about the air itself. See, household budgies have a respiratory system that is so efficient, so incredibly sensitive, that it processes airborne particles at a rate we can't even compare to our own. It's light years ahead of us. But here's what that really means. The things filling your home right now: a scented candle burning in the living room, a non-stick pan heating up on the stove, even a fresh coat of paint drying way down the hall can trigger a slow internal chain reaction. It's completely invisible to you, but it's devastating to them. And it doesn't happen instantly either. It builds up over time. You get this micro-inflammation along their airways, a subtle tightening that gets worse and worse with every single exposure until eventually, just moving around, being lifted up, being held, or even just being touched anywhere near the chest becomes genuinely painful. The bird isn't even reacting to your hand anymore at that point. It's reacting to the compounding effect of dozens of ordinary household moments you never once suspected were doing any harm. But here's the thing. By the time an owner finally notices labored breathing, which is the obvious symptom, the one every single care guide on the internet warns you about, the internal damage is usually already advanced. So the bite in all these documented cases, it wasn't the warning sign veterinarians wish owners had caught. It was actually the warning sign before the warning sign, the one almost nobody is ever taught to recognize. And that brings you to the exact moment that changes how you'll look at every random bite from now on. When researchers did a review of documented behavioral medical case studies, they traced a really disturbing pattern backward from birds that were diagnosed with advanced, hidden illnesses. In case after case, the owners all recalled the exact same detail, almost word for word. He bit me out of nowhere, just once, a few weeks before we realized something was wrong. Think about what that looks like in a normal house on a normal Tuesday. You're sitting there, your budgie is on your hand, and suddenly snap. A hard, painful bite. No eye pinning you could see, no puffed up feathers, no warning. You put him back in his cage, feeling a bit hurt, wondering why he's suddenly acting out. You think it's a behavioral problem. You think he's just being moody. But under the surface, that bird's lungs are quietly burning from the invisible fumes of a Teflon pan used 3 rooms away. Or maybe his joints are throbbing from a low-grade infection his tiny body has been fighting off in total silence for a month. He didn't bite you because he was mad at you. He bit you because he was exhausted, he was hurting, and he had absolutely no other way to say, "Something is terribly wrong inside me." We tend to forget how incredibly small these creatures are. A budgie weighs about 30 to 40 grams. That is roughly the weight of a single slice of bread. Now imagine an organism that small trying to process the chemical load of a modern human home. Our cleaning sprays, our perfumes, our air fresheners. To us, it's just a nice scent. To a 30-gram respiratory system designed to extract oxygen from thin mountain air while flying at high speeds, it's an absolute toxic assault. The lungs of a bird don't work like ours. They don't expand and contract with a simple diaphragm. They use a complex system of air sacs that constantly pump air through their lungs in a one-way loop. It is an engineering masterpiece of nature, built for high-performance survival. But because it's so efficient at absorbing oxygen, it is equally efficient at absorbing poisons. Every single breath they take concentrates whatever is in the room. So when that microinflammation starts, the bird doesn't have a voice to tell you his chest feels tight. He can't complain that it hurts to breathe. He just tries to keep up appearances, because in the wild, showing any sign of weakness or illness makes you an immediate target for a predator. They are hardwired to hide their pain until they literally cannot hide it anymore. So the illness stays hidden. The infection grows, or the respiratory tract keeps swelling, completely out of sight. The bird goes about his day, eating his seeds, sitting on his perch, pretending everything is completely fine. Until you reach out to touch him. Maybe you touch the exact spot near his chest, where the air sacs are swollen and tender. The pressure triggers a sharp, sudden jolt of agony. And in a reflex of pure survival and self-defense, the beak snaps shut on your finger. To you, it's a sudden behavioral shift that happened out of nowhere. But to the bird, it was a desperate, involuntary cry for relief from a pain that has been building up for weeks. When veterinarians look back at these case studies, the timeline is always heartbreakingly consistent. The bite happens. The owner assumes it's a phase and tries to correct the behavior. Then, 2 or 3 weeks later, the bird suddenly stops eating. It sits at the bottom of the cage, fluffed up, lethargic, clicking with every breath. They rush to the emergency vet, but by then, the infection or the respiratory failure has taken over. If only we knew how to read the bite not as an attitude problem, but as a medical red flag. This shifts the entire responsibility of being a bird owner. It means we have to stop looking at our pets through the lens of human psychology, assuming they are being spiteful or dominant or mean, and start looking at them through the lens of biology. Every single unexplained change in behavior is a data point. If a bird who normally loves to be handled suddenly nips your hand when you reach for them, your first thought shouldn't be, how do I train this out of him? Your first thought should be, where does it hurt? What changed in the environment? Did someone use a different cleaning product yesterday? Is there a draft hitting the cage? Is he harboring a hidden illness? It requires us to completely rewrite the script of how we interact with them. We have to become investigators, looking at the air, the food, the subtle shifts in their daily routine long before the obvious symptoms ever show up. Because by the time the obvious symptoms appear, time is already running out. The bird has used up every single ounce of reserve energy it had just to look normal. The bite was the absolute last line of communication it had left before its body started to completely give out. Next time your bird reacts unexpectedly, take a second. Look around the room. Check the air. Check the history of the last few weeks, because that single random bite might just be the most important piece of health data your bird will ever give you, and it's the only one you'll get before it's too late. It wasn't aggression, and it wasn't just a phase. It was a single isolated act of defense from a little body already under quiet siege. Honestly, it was the only signal strong enough to break through a survival instinct that had otherwise hidden everything else perfectly. The bite wasn't the illness announcing itself. It was just the mask slipping for 1 second before snapping right back into place. So let that settle for a moment. Somewhere in your home, right now, a bird you love might be broadcasting the only signal its biology actually allows. Not through a sound, not through their posture, but through a single sharp 30-second window every time you reach toward a specific part of their body. A gentle, unhurried check, slowly extending the wings, checking the feet and joints closely, touching the chest and tail area with the lightest possible pressure can sometimes reveal what an entire week of normal behavior completely hides. It isn't about being suspicious, it's about translation. It's learning to treat a sudden bite not as some flaw in your bird's personality, but as data. Data arriving in the only format your bird has ever had access to. So think back to that moment, the hand, the flinch, the sudden bite that felt like it came completely out of nowhere. It didn't come from nowhere. It came from underneath the feathers, from a place you were never shown how to look, in a language built for silence, not confession. Your Budgie wasn't actually trying to hurt you. He really wasn't. He was honestly just doing exactly what millions of years of survival trained him to do, which is to hide it. Hide the fear, hide the discomfort, right up until the moment where hiding it just wasn't an option anymore. And look, if you've ever felt that exact same thing, just that sudden unexpected strike from a bird who honestly seemed completely fine just seconds before, I want to hear about it. Tell me where it happened and exactly what part of their body you were touching at the time. Drop it down in the comments. Because honestly, you might be describing something way more important than you even realize.